Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. This is actually a very, very important live stream. Eric and Luke, the two best moderators in all of YouTube, thank you so very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support my work on this live stream, the super chat is greatly appreciated. To my super chat, thank you so very much. And I just want to read you a couple of articles before we get going. And I have super thanks, people who were kind enough to use the super thanks on the uploads. I'm going to thank you in a couple of minutes as well, individually. But CNBC, April 14th, 2020, you can look this up. You could just type in Google. Everyone, when you're done or when you're watching on the upload, hit the pause button and type this in. Or type this in, or hit the pause button and then type this in. Trump open up economy May 2020. In May of last year, he wanted to open up the economy. Trump wanted to open up the economy in May of last year. Okay? In May of last year, President Trump wanted to open up the economy. This would have prevented the need for an eviction moratorium. You did not have to shut down the entire American economy. I don't care if other countries did that, and I don't care if it was advised by certain bureaucracies. There were experts also saying that this would lead to an absolute catastrophe. It did. You don't go ahead if you have a headache. If you have a headache, you don't go ahead and bash your foot with a hammer. That's not how you that's not a remedy for a headache, okay? You don't go ahead and ram your car into a wall if you need an oil change. There are certain things you just don't do. If you overreact out of a paranoid response to a serious issue, but if you overreact because of paranoia and hysteria, you get now tens of thousands of families across the country, if not more, who might be homeless. The cure in the long run was worse than the remedy. Or the cure or the reaction are self-inflicted wounds. This was all self-inflicted. Okay? Is actually worse than when you look at the aggregate, when you look at the bird's eye view. You have to ask yourself, was the hysteria and did the experts make a correct call on our economy? Was Trump right, or were the experts right? You can look right now. There's an economic catastrophe we're facing. And AOC, basically, what she did, she blamed Democrats. She said that it's disingenuous not to blame Democrats, and it's true. She's part of the racket also. She basically sided with President Trump, but did you hear her last week? Did she say, hey, you probably shouldn't have this committee for an atrocity that took place in January, especially since we didn't have committees on the atrocities that took place for 4 to 5 months prior to November of last year. Maybe we should actually focus on a way to prevent an eviction moratorium from ending. Why do you think people now don't have the money to pay their rent? Okay? Why do you think people now are facing homelessness? I wanted to read this to you. Just type in Trump open up economy May 2020 on Google. Trump says state economies may open for business. CNBC, and of course that the article was, experts saying, that can't happen. NPR, President Trump wants to open up the economy despite experts saying the opposite. LA Times, amid you-know-what, can Trump reopen the economy on May 1st? Washington Post, reopening U.S. economy by May 1st may be unrealistic, say experts. The Guardian, this is the best one. Trump gives up on the fight to end, the health crisis to focus on economic recovery. He gives up on, you couldn't do both. He gave up on it. He gave up on it, you know? Trump will face, this is CNN, Trump will have to face the price of reopening the U.S. And there are endless articles every single time. Every single time that President Trump, every single time President Trump wanted to reopen the economy, Democrats, experts, publications from NPR to the LA Times to the Washington Post to the Guardian, every publication that said Trump worked with Russia and that he compelled people to commit violent acts, everyone, CNN, MSNBC said, no, too soon. We can't open up the economy. It's too soon. Did they have any idea? And they did. They knew that this would be an economic catastrophe for people. You can say what you like about Trump. You don't have to like Trump. You can think he's the horrible president. This was not his fault. Now they're calling it Trumpvilles, like, homeless camps. Trump. Are you kidding me? This is Biden's America, number one. And it was the Democratic Party who holds almost 100% responsibility for tanking the entire United States economy. Now, President Trump began, a couple of months he said, yeah, go ahead and we need to shut things down. I didn't agree with that then. But he faced pressure. I didn't agree with that then. But there was a political motivation, and now you have Democrats, their only goal, you had one job. Democrats had one job, one goal, to pass some kind of legislation, that would keep people in their homes. They had one goal. All they had is one job to do. And now you have a couple progressive Congress people protesting now. You've been protesting the past week. They're only protesting now. See, it's a theatrical performance. They don't care. They care about painting Trump as the leader of a deranged group of people who committed a criminal acts in January. That's what they did the past week. And as always, the public relations spin doesn't work out. It just completely and utterly backfires. And now you have people who, in many cases, don't have... Are you serious? You've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. Oh my God. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know if you can hear me. God, are you serious? Unbelievable. This is unbelievable. Are you kidding me? Oh my God, dude. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm back. Let me know if this works. Am I back? All right. So this is very bizarre. Right as I'm doing the live stream, it says that I have to log back in. And so I did. Very bizarre. Anyway, let me know. Can you hear me, ladies and gentlemen? Is everything working? All right, I think everything's working now. So, the question, ladies and gentlemen, is the following. Whose fault is this? They blame Trump for everything. But the reality is, this is not Trump's fault. This is the fault of the Democratic Party. You did not have to tank the entire American economy. This was not something, like, the way they look at it is, well, there's nothing we could have done. And it was because Trump didn't take it seriously. He downplayed everything. And now look where we're at. Nobody asked you to end life as we know it. You knew very well that you would gain politically. There was political gain, obvious political gain, in tanking the United States economy. That's obvious. There was obvious political gain in that. If you think that Democratic politicians only cared about saving people's lives, you also believe that they're really interested in a Medicare for all vote in the House, which of course they're petrified of, because that would actually force them to abide by their alleged value system, which they don't have. It's a theatrical performance. It's a racket. They don't care. They talk about wealth inequality on Twitter because Twitter is a platform where you can preach and pontificate and pretend you're morally superior without having to actually be morally superior, without actually having to engage in moral conduct. You can simply say, oh, well, Trump, he's a criminal. Well, then why don't you indict him? If he's such a criminal, why don't you? He has so many people around him. Well, yeah, could you imagine if they had the same enthusiasm and zeal to go after Democratic politicians? You could name people associated with Democrats. You could name from Hunter to a whole bunch of people. Papanaya Shelley, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Greatly appreciated. Papanaya Shelley, thank you. Thank you. I just find it, thank you again. I find it very interesting that Washington Post, let's just read this article right here. Washington Post, reopening U.S. economy by May 1st may be unrealistic, say experts, including some within Trump administration. Everything is an appeal to authority. And this article was basically a template everyone in media had the same type of... It was the same article written over and over again. It was the exact same article written over and over again. It was, oh my God, you can't open things up too quickly. Oh my God, if you open things up too quickly, it's a big problem. And, if you open things up too quickly, people will be at risk. And nobody thought of the economic repercussions. I mean, it was madness. It was absolute madness. Do you understand? And I'm actually speaking, everything I say goes through an AI robot in my brain before I actually say it. There are things that I would like to say, but I can't because of the algorithm. But it was absolute mad. Public health experts on Sunday debated the question of whether to reopen portions of the U.S. economy. Shuttered because of the pandemic? No, it was because of the reaction. All right, can you hear me now, ladies and gentlemen? Mr. Barlow, thank you so very much. I appreciate that greatly. Jean-Louis Blackburn, tell a liberal he's overreacting. That should be fun. Yeah, it never works out well if you do. Jean-Louis Blackburn, thank you. Mr. Barlow, thank you. It's unbelievable. Mr. Barlow, Jean-Louis Blackburn, public health experts. This was last May. This was last year in May. Public health experts on Sunday debated the question of when to reopen the U.S. economy. That should never have been on the table. It was complete madness. It was the height of... It was completely irresponsible. The most vulnerable people in any population, those people should have, there should have been protocols, not mandated, but advised, because there's something called free will, which Democrats don't believe in. You should have simply stated, look, this is a phenomenon we've experienced as a world that affects a certain age group of people and people with pre-existing conditions. You don't tank the entire economy. You don't shut down all of life as we know it. I don't care if France and the UK and others were doing that. I don't care. Because people then you had mayors in cities telling people they were going to shut down water and power, electricity, to people's homes because there were house parties. You had house parties going on. You had people going to Costco. You had people going to, retail stores, being stuck in, crowded supermarkets because of a run on toilet paper. And it's it was complete and utter madness. There was groupthink the groupthink never worked. The cities with the most draconian policies, the states with the most draconian policies, primarily New York and New Jersey, and God bless the people of New York and New Jersey, had the worst outcomes. This was pretty much what took place. They had the worst outcomes. And instead of simply saying, okay, let's make sure that the cure isn't worse than the illness. Let's make sure that we don't engage in irreparable damage. I think this is almost irreparable at this point. Okay, economic, if you look at loss of income alone, how many trillions of dollars hold on one second. $16 trillion. This was not the fault of a microscopic organism. This was the fault of human beings who were experts, who we were told you must trust because of their vast knowledge, which didn't correlate to wisdom. $16 trillion. $16 trillion. And you have now people being evicted primarily because Democrats brought us to this point by gleefully tanking the United States economy, which they didn't have to do. Don't say you had to do it because France and the UK did it. They did worse than Sweden. Sweden was the one country in the world that said, yeah, we're going to look at the numbers, and our scientists, their scientists and their the government was a lot smarter when it came to this. And you look, now you have evictions, and Democrats had one job, just to find a way to extend the moratorium on evictions that they caused with their failed policies. And that's a fact. If the rebuttal is, you can't blame one political party, this was, they were trying to save lives. No, they weren't. Number one, in Democratic-run states, you have the worst outcomes according to the New York Times statistics. Go look at the statistics. The most draconian policies did not work. The long-term economic destruction, the long-term catastrophe, is almost entirely the fault of the Democratic Party. You could have simply ensured that restaurants didn't close down, that businesses, that you could have simply said, look, if you have pre-existing conditions and you're of a certain age where this really affects you, where you could easily lose your life, then take precautions. You don't tank all of American life. You don't end all of American life. You don't tank the entire country. Why would you do this? The entire country? I mean, and how long do you think you could do this for, by the way? Do you understand the cult? They say that Trump is like a cult leader. No, he's not. He doesn't care if you vote for him or not. He doesn't utilize intelligence agencies to convince people that Democrats worked with Putin. If anything, what he said, the origins of certain something, things that he has said have been pretty, he's been right to be suspicious. He doesn't tell you to believe anything. People like him because he offers a different viewpoint, and we had record low unemployment, and he single-handedly reversed U.S. foreign policies. A very good president. This is entirely the fault of Democrats and progressives in Congress. These progressives, these morally superior progressives who said nothing the past week. Did they just realize that the eviction on moratoriums would end? Did they just realize that yesterday? What were they doing the past week? Oh, that's right. They were keeping quiet because they were very likely told to do so by Pelosi and other Democrats. Why would you tank? I said this to myself last year, and I remember talking about this and telling everybody during the live streams and uploads here and there. I'd say, look, you know what? This doesn't make any sense. Why would you gleefully tank the economy? It should never have been. I actually talked to somebody, a couple people who were, liberal. And they're like, oh, no, you can't say that. I mean, we had to do that. You didn't have to. There were red states that didn't shut down, and they did much better. You're not going to, look, it should have been an age-specific. All of this should have been age-specific. you knew early on last year that a certain age group of people, I'm not going to get into it, but older Americans, you knew that they could lose their life, and 80%, according to the wonderful government body that we should all trust and revere them and trust them. It doesn't matter if what they say tomorrow is different from what they say today. Trust and revere. We must trust them. This is also an absurd thing. This is also a new, and it's because Republicans don't speak in unison, or actually don't really offer an opposing viewpoint. Trump does. Most the establishment Republicans, the people that will be primaried out very soon in 2022, they don't offer another viewpoint. And so you can look through history. Who remembers, ladies and gentlemen, Pelosi might, but the tulip craze. Invest in tulips. Great investment. Tulip mania. Okay? All the smartest people in the room. Tulip mania was a period in the Dutch Golden Age when contract prices for some bulbs of the recently introduced and fashionable tulip reached extraordinary high levels, and then dramatically collapsed in 1637. All the smartest people in the room were putting their life savings in tulips. Okay? And you can look, it's not just that. There are endless examples of stories where the smartest people... Enron was a strong buy. Do you understand? I used to be a financial advisor 20 years ago. Morgan Stanley, a bunch of places. And Wall Street analysts loved Enron to the end. It was a strong buy even like 2 months prior to it tanking. Okay? Enron was the most widely hyped stock of 2000, climbing 88.6%. I actually bought I just remember back then I said, I'm going to get a certificate because this is going to be part of history. Because, it completely tanked and all of these smartest people in the room called Enron a strong buy up until the end. They called it a strong buy. Analysts certainly shouldn't have had a problem reading the writing on the wall. It stood out like graffiti, yet as recently as last week, this was 20 years ago, this article, more than half of the 15 analysts of the company rated the stock at least a buy. 6 had Enron a strong buy and 2 a buy. Yeah, the Titanic was supposed to be unsinkable. 2 brokerage firms. And then they downgraded it from a strong buy to once it went from $84 to $4. And then it closed at 61 cents, and then obviously it tanked. This is a November 29th CNN 2001, November 29th, 2001 article, CNN Money article. That's just one of the many examples you can give of the smartest people in the room lacking wisdom. Why in this day and age should experts be revered when they're almost always wrong on the mentality that a whole bunch of experts agree, and anyone who disagrees, who could be an expert, well, they're outside of the consensus, so they're obviously wrong. In many cases throughout history, the opposite is true. Okay? Aristotle ended his own life because he couldn't stand expert consensus. Okay? Okay? I mean, it's like it's like why is it, aside from the fact that Republicans actually aren't an opposing political party, the only opposition is Trump. That's why he raised more money than any other Republican in history, than any former president in history. Okay? He's raised more money than any president in history. Okay? But when did we as a society, when did media become the arbiter of truth? The gatekeepers to truth, or reason, or logic, or wisdom? Is there any emphasis on wisdom in our society at all? There's zero emphasis on that. Nobody even knows what it is. Nobody even cares about the concept of the ability to think in a manner that, like, promotes the most good or the best outcome in the long term. Everything is short-term gain or paranoid, hysterical response to everything. Wisdom is different from intelligence. You could be extremely intelligent. You think the people who ran Enron, or the people who lost their money in the tulip craze, or the stock market crash in 29, or every stock market crash we've had, or the housing bubble, or whatever, WMD, you don't think the intelligence community is filled with very bright people? Only the most educated people got us into Vietnam. They even had these Sigma games, war games, that actually showed we would lose. They still went in. And that doesn't, just because you're intelligent, just because you're an expert, just because there's intelligent expert consensus, doesn't mean you're going to come out with something that is a wise course of action, or a course of action that is linked to wisdom. Wisdom is a million times more important than intelligence. Jean-Louis Blackburn! Being orange is the only crime. Exactly. Jean-Louis Blackburn, thank you. Jean-Louis Blackburn, thank you as always. And thank you, by the way, for today, for the super thanks. Jean-Louis Blackburn and the upload, everybody, gave me a super thanks, and I want to thank some people as well in the upload. There's a Wayne I want to thank. Thank you, Wayne, for the super thanks. And last up, Wayne, thank you so very much, Wayne. I'll thank you, Jean-Louis, and Wayne also in the upload I'll do tonight. I'll do an upload before 12 a.m. tonight, very likely, or I'll do one tomorrow morning. But, like, you look and it's like the racket, it's unbelievable. Somebody on Twitter said something like last year, well, you know, you'll end up like H.A. Goodman if you keep on criticizing the Democratic Party. Yeah, you will. You definitely will, and you should end up like me. You might not. You don't have to support Trump. But if you don't look, if you can't see the political side that if you can't see the political side, the politicians that got us to this point, it wasn't Trump. You cannot blame Trump for mass evictions and for homelessness and for soaring crime. You cannot blame Trump. If you want to say that he was divisive, okay. The reaction was a fabricated. He was divisive. I still to this day I don't agree with, like, I don't like LeBron James's political stance on everything, but President Trump should never have insulted LeBron James. He should never have insulted NFL athletes. The main thing was the NFL. He should never have done that. It was one of the worst things you could do at that moment in time. It did no good. It did no good. But see, again, there's a rational critique of Trump. But you cannot blame Trump for what's going on. It is almost entirely the fault of the Democratic Party. They gleefully pushed lockdowns, and then they failed to extend the moratorium on evictions. So it's just, you add those two things together, it's a financial catastrophe. It is a financial catastrophe. And you look and it's like, millions across U.S. at risk of eviction. How does that happen? I mean, is it not madness? Is it not madness? What are you, like, how did we get to this point? I mean, I could tell you exactly how. I know how we got to this point. Groupthink and a weak Republican Party that investigated its own Republican president, like the fools that they are. Millions of tenants will be at risk of eviction. How do you do this? And here's the question. You vote Democrat. And I can't stay. I don't want to say this. The people who focused on Trump, I shouldn't say here. I don't want to say that. These are Democratic Party policies. You didn't have to shut down every restaurant. Why? Look. You could have simply said, okay, there's 25% capacity. Okay, in Los Angeles, before the lockdowns, people weren't going to restaurants anyway. So it's like you could have let the free market just take care of a lot of what you tried to mandate. And that is a libertarian perspective, although, like, I'm not a libertarian on everything. I'm not any political, like, I'm just, if something is logical to me, it makes sense, good. If Medicare for all was feasible, I'd be like, fantastic. Well, that's great. It's probably not feasible. It's probably impossible for a nation of 320 million people. If you look at the Mercatus study, but see, again, let's say I'm wrong. I'm willing to be wrong on that, fine. Why don't you go vote on it? You can't vote on it because it's not pragmatic? Well, you impeached Trump twice. You knew very well he wasn't going to. He wasn't going to be kicked out of office. So that wasn't pragmatic. But you impeached him anyway. You have millions of people now. I mean, how do you... How do you... If this is Biden's America, how do you ignore this? You talk about the cult. They're impervious to facts or reason or logic. They're only run on emotion. Cults generally run on emotion because logic would indicate that you shouldn't believe that any human being is superior or, godlike. The cult is the resistance, oppose Trump even at the expense of truth and logic. Let's say he was right. God forbid. God forbid you simply say that, Trump's right on that. God forbid. It's just this. It's just because of the cranberry juice. Don't call SEAL Team 6. I'm feeling great. Millions of Americans could be facing eviction. Notice here, not one mention. An estimated 7 million Americans are still behind on rent. $7 million Americans. Why? And is anyone asking whose fault is this? Because they blame Trump for everything. Has anybody? It's Biden's America now. It's Biden's America. It is August. Do not blame Trump. It is August of 2021. You have the House. You have the Senate. You have the Oval Office. What more do you want? What more do you want? You have Hollywood. You have every social media company. You have a virtual monopoly on political thought. What more do you want? This is happening, 7-8 months into Biden's wonderful presidency with soaring crime and inflation. Tell me, you couldn't stand record low unemployment because Orange Man was mean. Now you have millions upon millions facing evictions because of your policies. Trump wanted to open up the economy in May of last year. You said no. Democrats said no. Experts said no. How is that Trump's fault? I want to know how that's Trump's fault. How is it his fault? Please tell me. Somebody tell me how it's his fault. Somebody. This is something that was completely immoral. It was not ethical. It was not. There was no. There was no logic or reason in tanking society as we know it. There was no logic. Where was the logic or reason? Where were the ethical standards in tanking all of society, knowing very well people would have a very difficult, if not impossible, time trying to find work again? Knowing we have that we live in a service economy. We live in a service economy. People need to be employed, whether it's their restaurant or their, like the office, or we live in an economy where, people have to work with other people. And if you wanted to keep everyone safe, you could have simply said, look, we're going to have to implement protocols. But these protocols won't tank the entire American economy. And I don't understand. Now you have millions of people facing eviction, and not one person in media is asking, hey, you think maybe Democratic policies didn't work out? You think just maybe all the lofty ideals, like, oh yeah, I want to let you know, is wealth inequality. How's wealth inequality now, Bernie? You got exactly what you wanted, Bernie Sanders. I got exactly what I wanted. Yes. Kudos to me, everyone. Orange Man was the most offensive and harmful president we've ever had. My Bernard Sanders imitation is going down the tank faster than our own economy. If you say a derogatory word about Deborah Wasserman, you'll have me to contend with. You got what you wanted, Bernie. And you got to understand the grift and the racket. I just want to let everybody know, we don't have Medicare for all. The Planet Green New Deal and student loan. How about making sure that people don't get evicted because of your failed policies? How's Medicare for all now? Well, I could say that. How's wealth inequality now, Bernie and AOC? How's that doing? Is that doing good? Was it better with Orange Man, or is it better now? Because you got exactly what you wanted. Paul, thank you. They got exactly what they wanted. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful. And the one thing about, even the polls last year, and generally presidents are evaluated on how the economy runs. Generally. Okay? Generally. And every poll prior to November showed that almost every poll showed that Trump led on the economy. You think we'd be in a better financial situation now? Jean-Louis Blackburn! The left needs the ranks of the unemployed provide militants. The Roman legions were recruited from unemployed Romans. Jean-Louis Blackburn, that is a very interesting point. I think that you could be right. Jean-Louis Blackburn, thank you. I think that you could be right on that. I'll say one thing though, Jean-Louis, that's a great point. I would respectfully disagree in one respect. Okay? I don't even think they care. I think that right now they have enough publications, cable stations, social media algorithms where they can just, let's say millions face eviction, hundreds of thousands are evicted, tens of thousands become homeless. More than that, hundreds of thousands, God forbid. I think that they'll try their best to not even address the issue, or they'll blame Trump. He did in the beginning. Trump made a mistake in the beginning by acquiescing to. He should never have given them that, shutting down the economy. He should never have done that. But he tried to reopen the economy in May. See, the biggest mistake Trump ever made was not defending General Michael Flynn initially. General Michael Flynn did nothing wrong. They say he was indicted on allegedly lying to Peter Strzok, who was literally kicked out of the Bureau and the Mueller probe for absolute contempt and disdain for Trump. And I think history would be different right now had Trump stood by General Michael Flynn, because then they'd have to defend. They'd have to defend what they were doing. The Roz Rodriguez! Thank you, just here to say great job, and thank you for all that you do, H.A. The Roz Rodriguez! Thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you, the Roz Rodriguez. I hope all is well. Hope you're doing great. Thank you so much. That means a great deal to me, and thank you so very much. I can't do these live streams, ladies and gentlemen, without Jean-Louis Blackburn, everybody here in the Roz Rodriguez, and everybody that, supports the channel. So I just thank you so very much. I hope all is well. Hope you're doing well. The Roz Rodriguez, thank you so very much. Thank you for your generosity as well. I hope you're doing well. I don't understand. Jean-Louis and the Roz Rodriguez, thank you again. So kind of you. I don't understand how people fall for. You want to talk about if CNN says Trump is leading a cult, the real cult, the real blind devotion. When you have Joe Biden saying, you are not who you are if you don't vote for me, to Charlemagne the God. When you have somebody with the audacity who already wrote the crime bill and the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity and then says that, and then people blindly, like half the country blindly shows this devotion to the Democratic Party without having any affinity for our beloved President Biden. It says something about blind devotion and a cult-like mentality when you just vote for somebody who probably couldn't make it out of a room on his own. And when you do that only because you want to oppose a mean or offensive person in your mind. They have such contempt and disdain for Trump. It's like it's not only unhealthy, it's completely irrational. And they're unable to actually see how bad their policies are. The Roz Rodriguez, thank you again. So kind of you. So kind of you. Thank you. $16 trillion. And then this is another racket. You've tanked life as we know it. The Roz Rodriguez, Jean-Louis, everyone here. You're the Democratic Party. You've tanked life as we know it because to keep people safe and science. Then you give stimulus checks. Okay. But you've prevented people from working. Then you give stimulus checks. Say, look, we're here for you. But you've prevented people from working. You have dried up the entire lake and then just given people, half a fish every other month or 3 months. Like you have, this is what they do also. They're like, oh, we're so moral. We believe in a social safety net. Yeah, that is good. Have you ever asked why certain Democratic parts of the country, cities, places, are perpetually mired in poverty? Then they talk about systemic issues. They're literally presiding over, decade after decade of poverty within Democratic-run areas, and then they say, well, we support safety nets. You haven't even focused on lifting people out of poverty in many of the areas that you claim to champion. They demand blind allegiance. Then you get this interesting diatribe from Logan Paul last week. It's he probably doesn't even believe anything he says. But it's when people say there are systemic issues within the country, there's going to be mass evictions now. So you went from record low unemployment. This is a fact. You went from record low unemployment, wage increases, to now mass evictions. Which America is better? And don't say you had to. The reaction last year, the shutting down of American life, was pushed by one political side and opposed by Trump. Let's repeat that forever. Even if you blame Trump for, you know what, it's his fault. 100% his fault. All Trump's fault. He downplayed everything. Intelligence community told him, but not everybody else. Hey, Trump, this is going to happen. Don't tell anybody, but, I'll let you know. He downplayed everything. It's all his fault. It's Trump's fault. 100% Trump's fault. 100% Trump's fault. Fine, believe that if you want. But don't say that the response to the global health crisis, the absolute madness, the economic catastrophe, the disaster of shutting down the entire United States economy in what seemed to be this endless, gleeful, attempt by Democrats to hide behind, well, we're just trying to help people. Don't blame Trump for the United States economy being shut down Don't blame Trump. It's not Trump's fault. You could say whatever you like. You say, he worked with Russia. There's no evidence of that. You could believe anything you'd like. But it is not. He wanted to open up the economy and allow people to work. And then if you say, people, they would perish. Okay, there are people right now throughout, because of shutting down society, who lost their lives because of all different types of reasons. Every single day when you cross, and by the way, pointing like they would gleefully say, look, Herman Cain didn't do what we said, so he lost his life. And they would gleefully, they're so petulant, it's unbelievable. They'd say, whoa, this person lost their life, and they didn't listen to us. It's like, well, if with using that logic, nobody should listen to you. You preside over the worst outcomes, according to the New York Times statistics. The greatest number of lives lost, 6 to 7 of the top 10 states with the greatest number of lives lost are Democratic-run states. 3 of the top 5 states are Democratic-run, or it used to be 4 of the top 5. The top 4 states with the highest per capita rates are Democratic-run locations, or blue states. So why should anyone listen to you? And it's really unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. The Roz Rodriguez, thank you again. And Eric MDK, thank you. And I think that there's a breakdown in logic, and I never used to be this way. I never used to say, well, I used to say, well, to each his own. If you want to, be religious or believe in God, it's, to each his own. Whether you're an atheist or a religious person, I would always believe it really doesn't matter as long as you're a good person. And that's true to a great extent. And I think there's very logical, rational people who are atheists and agnostic. Like the most logical and rational people I've ever met in my life oftentimes are agnostic or they just don't know. But there's a certain group, unfortunately, there's a great percentage of atheists who are liberal Democrats, have replaced religion with politics. And these oftentimes are the experts that we have to listen to. Or that we don't have to, but that media and, the American political establishment, let's say, compels so many to trust and to listen to and implores people to listen to. And when you replace, it doesn't matter what religion you are in this world, especially in this society, it doesn't matter what religion you are. Every day, you should, if you are inclined to believe that God exists, you don't know what religion, but you know that there's something out there, then pray to that God to keep you safe and to keep you sane. Because it's much better than, giving your trust to people who alter their viewpoint daily and demand that you revere everything they say. They kind of don't get it, too, because they're such a narcissist. It's like, well, people don't trust you because you're actually, you're wrong on a lot of things. That's right, people don't trust you. This misinformation is causing people to lose a lot of misinformation. It's like, no, you mean information that's contrary to what? Oh, no, we fact-checked. But you didn't actually, there's so many fact checks that are actually just rebuttals or appeals to authority. Scott, exactly. It doesn't matter what religion you are. A belief in, I think in this day and age, it's a million times better to pray to a God than to believe the completely irrational and paranoid and hysterical response of experts who are extremely educated and intelligent, who just happen to always change their viewpoint, alter their viewpoint daily. Well, we didn't know. There's new information. Well, yeah, you should probably factor that in, genius, when you say that everyone should revere every word that you utter. See, if you make a command that everyone must follow, based on these this consensus of experts that look into the future, you should probably factor in the possibility that you might not know what will take place in the future, but that your current advice is good enough because you're so educated and you're such experts and there's such a consensus. Good enough that you won't have to alter your your command or advice or command simply because you found out new information. You can always say that. That's a cop-out. That's a poor excuse for being wrong. Well, we have new information. Well, yeah, but that's why you shouldn't demand obedience. If you know you could be wrong tomorrow, don't demand obedience today. But see, again, you're talking about narcissists, so you're talking about complete narcissists. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go 10 minutes more. You're talking about people who, do you think that there's going to be, you think people would put two and two together and say, oh, this is Biden's America? No. Anything bad that took place in Trump's America when he was in office, anything bad was linked to Trump, directly linked to Trump. It was directly his fault. It wasn't possibly, the fault of Democrats. It wasn't possibly the fault of President Obama. It wasn't possibly the fault of people who just commit evil, no matter who's president. It was directly his fault and directly the Republican Party's fault. Do you think people will actually try to put two and two together and say, oh, okay, well, this is Biden's America. Democrats gleefully tanked the U.S. economy to save people, and the cure was worse than the ailment. And, maybe we should not give this blind devotion to Biden or Democrats or media. You think that's going to happen? You think that people will actually engage in critical thinking? Probably not. You think that's going to happen? You think that's even possible in our world today? The wake-up call or look, once 2022 is around the corner. Once 2022, once the House goes Republican and Trump Republican, things will change. Once the House goes Trump Republican, things will change for the better. You'll have never Trumpers kicked out of office, thank God. And that's not an example of canceling them out. It's an example of how political parties work. Nobody's going back in time and trying to find out a tweet just to ruin someone's life. Because that's what the whole, canceling culture is. It's trying to, in the most petulant, vapid, Are you serious? All right, I'm just going to Jeffrey Toobin right now. Just joking. Larry! Okay, 10 minutes. You can go full on apoplectic. Do it. If you say a derogatory word, Larry. The Roz Rodriguez, thank you again. If anyone says a derogatory word about Deborah Wasserman, it's going to be a bad day for everybody. Larry! Thank you, Larry! Of course, I have to... Usual computer issues. Big problem. God, it's such a... The racket on the left is unbelievable. When you... God forbid you'll have... I hope this doesn't happen, but unfortunately there's going to be tens of thousands of people evicted from their homes. There's going to be tens of thousands of people evicted from their homes, unfortunately. You think people will realize that maybe Bernie Sanders and AOC don't care? Maybe instead of focusing on blaming Trump for working with Russia or for January or for everything that is not his fault or that he didn't do, or that they can't indict him in a court of law, you think maybe, just maybe, people will realize that it's a morality racket. They have a morality fetish. They don't care about actual morality. It's how can I seem moral? How can I portray that I'm morally superior because it makes me feel so good? Paul, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. To my super chat, Jean-Louis, everyone here, the Roz Rodriguez, thank you so much. So kind of you. The Roz Rodriguez, thank you. To my super chat, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new to the channel, there's a super thanks. And to my super thanks, thank you so very much. For the upload, there's a super thanks that you can basically super chat on the upload. So it's right next to the like button. Everyone, thanks so much. God bless. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. I should have a live stream tomorrow at 10 p.m.